She told no one where she was going, just climbed into her rust-red Jeep as the sun began to fall behind the Mojave Cliffs and disappeared into the horizon like a shadow slipping under a locked door. No missing persons alert, no search, not a trace, until a decade later, when her Jeep was unearthed, cocooned in salt and thyme, with something or someone buried beside it. What happened to Lila Morgan in the desert that night? And why did the silence last so long? Some stories aren't lost, they're buried, on purpose. The Mojave air shimmered like glass about to break. Lila Morgan rolled down the window of her Jeep Wrangler, letting the dry heat slap her cheek as the radio flickered in and out. A broken hymn of static and twangy country songs followed her west, deeper into nowhere. She didn't care what played. She wasn't listening. Her hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring her to this reality. In the rearview mirror, the last hints of the town she'd fled shrank to dust, disappearing into the folds of a bleeding desert sunset. The Jeep rattled over cracked asphalt. Mile marker, 179. She passed it without a glance. Her phone buzzed. 1 bar of reception. A voicemail left unread. Maya, 2 missed calls. She hesitated, her thumb hovering. Then, she locked the screen and dropped the phone onto the passenger seat like it burned. Inside the glove box, a weathered spiral notebook bounced with each bump in the road. Its corners were frayed, the cover warped from sun and sweat, scribbled on the front barely legible. Field notes. Confessions. Exit plan. She didn't turn on her headlights. No one would see her out here anyway. Night spread across the sky like spilled ink. The ridgeline curved into silhouettes, and the radio cut out completely. Lila's mouth trembled as she whispered something to herself, too soft to hear. Her eyes stayed locked ahead, pupils dilated, alert. Suddenly, she braked. Hard. Dust erupted into the air. The Jeep shuddered and stalled. A figure stood in the road. Or maybe it was just the shape of a Joshua tree. Her breathing faltered. She restarted the engine, drove forward, and was never seen again. The call came on a Tuesday, the kind of day that meant nothing. Gray sky, forgotten errands, a migraine creeping behind Maya Morgan's eyes like a dull storm. She almost didn't answer. The number was out of state. Unknown. She let it ring twice more before instinct, or maybe guilt, made her swipe the screen. This is Maya. A pause. Then, Ms. Morgan, this is Deputy Reese with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office. I need to talk to you about your sister. Maya's breath hitched. Her hand tightened around the phone. My sister's been gone for 10 years. I know, the deputy said, voice low and even. But we found her vehicle. Maya stood completely still in the middle of her small Seattle kitchen, framed by coffee-stained counters and an unopened stack of medical bills. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Where? In the southern Mojave salt flats, buried under about 4 feet of packed silt and mineral crust. We had to use excavation tools to get to it. It looks like it was intentionally concealed. Maya closed her eyes. Salt. She hadn't thought about salt in years, hadn't dared. The word was sour in her throat. Was anyone inside? She asked. We're still assessing, Reese said carefully. There were human remains found near the site, but we don't have a positive ID yet. We'd like you to come down. Give a statement. Maybe help us confirm if any of the items in the vehicle belong to your sister. Maya leaned against the sink, suddenly nauseous. The faucet was dripping. Tick, tick, tick. 10 years, she whispered. I'm sorry, Reese said, but we might finally have a lead. Maya didn't cry. Not yet. There were no tears left for Lila. Not the Lila that vanished without a word. Not the silence that had become Maya's inheritance. She stared at the rain bleeding down her kitchen window, her reflection distorted in the glass. Her hair was longer now, her eyes sharper, harder. "I'll be on the next flight," she said. The desert air hit Maya like a slap, hot, dry, familiar in a way that made her stomach churn. The plane had landed an hour ago in Palm Springs. The rental car, too clean, too cold, now hummed beneath her as she drove eastward, back into the part of California most people only passed through or tried to forget. But the Mojave? It remembered everything, like a vault with no key. She hadn't been back in over a decade, not since Lila vanished, not since the fight that ended everything. She gripped the steering wheel tighter as the familiar landmarks reappeared. Ghost motels, rusted gas pumps, a faded billboard that used to say, "Come home, Lila," before the sun erased the ink. Now it just whispered, "Come home," in faint letters, like the desert itself was begging. In the distance, the cracked sign for the town came into view. Dry Lake, Pop, 2104. The 2 was spray painted. It probably hadn't been accurate for years. The town was smaller than Maya remembered. Or maybe she was just bigger now, tougher, heavier with time and grief. Her boots hit the dirt outside the sheriff's station like gunshots. As she walked toward the door, a flash of memory hit her. Lila, 17, barefoot in the driveway, arms crossed, mascara smeared. "You always leave when things get hard, Maya. Maybe next time, don't come back." Maya, 21, keys shaking in her hand. "Maybe I won't." She didn't. And now, Lila was gone. Inside the sheriff's office, a young deputy looked up from behind the front desk. His face registered recognition, or maybe pity. "You must be Maya Morgan." She nodded once, jaw tight. "You found my sister's Jeep?" The deputy gestured toward the hallway. "Sheriff Dane's expecting you. It's a lot." Maya inhaled sharply and stepped inside. She was ready for answers. Or at least, she wanted to believe she was. Outside, the wind blew across the salt like a whisper. The desert hadn't forgotten, and now it had something to say. The salt flats looked like the surface of another planet. Cracked white earth stretched endlessly, framed by pale mountains that shimmered in the distance like mirages. Maya stood at the yellow tape's edge, the sun bleaching her clothes, the wind stinging her face with dry grit. Sheriff Dane adjusted his sunglasses beside her. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s, quiet-eyed, sunburnt, with a voice that sounded like gravel soaked in still water. "That's where we found the Jeep," he said, pointing to a shallow depression in the earth. Just under that crust layer, someone buried it deliberately, packed salt around it to preserve it. Preserve. Maya's breath hitched as she stepped closer. The vehicle was gone now, towed to evidence, but its ghost remained. Tire tracks, disturbed earth, a piece of red paint that had flaked off the hood, curling at the edges like old skin. "And the body?" she asked. He hesitated. "Found it about 20 feet from the vehicle. Female. No ID, no clothing, no shoes. Decomposition was arrested by the salt. No signs of trauma. Not visibly, anyway." A silence fell between them. "It wasn't Lila," she said, more a question than a statement. "We're waiting on dental and DNA, but—" He glanced at her. The body looked older, early 40s maybe. Maya folded her arms, the wind catching her hair. "So who is she?" Dane took a breath. "Locals are calling her the Salt Woman. That name's been floating around this town for years. An old story about a woman who got lost out here and turned to crystal in the sun. People claim to see her walking the flats at night." Maya gave him a look. "You're saying people think it's some kind of ghost?" "I'm saying people like stories," Dane said. "They need to believe the desert doesn't just swallow people for no reason." He motioned her toward a small evidence table. A pair of boots, a A keychain with a chipped motel logo and a melted cassette tape lay under plastic covers. Any of this look familiar? Maya stared at the objects, then down at the salt. The wind whispered again, and this time it sounded like her sister's voice. 10 years ago, no one called it a crime. The report was thin, barely 3 pages. Name: Lila Morgan, age 26, last seen, leaving town in her personal vehicle. Status: presumed voluntary departure. That last line still made Maya's stomach turn. The officer assigned to the case, Deputy Grant, now retired, had barely asked any questions. Probably ran off with a guy, he told Maya back then, as if Lila's life could be explained by a bad romance. Maya had tried. She brought photos, phone records, printouts of Lila's text messages, cryptic, urgent ones from the week before she vanished. She begged them to take it seriously. She was scared, Maya said. She was planning something. Grant didn't even look up from his notepad. Planning a fresh start, maybe. He scribbled something, then offered her a weak smile. Look, no sign of foul play, no body, no crime scene. She's an adult. People disappear all the time. But she left her bank card, her cat, her job. Grant shrugged. Maybe she wanted out. And that was it. Case closed. No alert issued. No search party. Lila had vanished into heat and silence, and the town let her go like a shrug of wind. Later, Maya would hear whispers. She always was dramatic. Trouble followed her. Didn't she get into it with that guy before she left? Maybe she liked the attention. Lila wasn't a missing person. She was a story, a rumor, a cautionary tale. And Maya? She was the sister who wouldn't stop asking questions. Eventually, she stopped showing up, moved north, buried the grief in a job, a rented life, unanswered letters she never sent. But none of it ever sat right. Lila wasn't the kind of person who disappeared without reason. She was brave, stubborn. She took notes on everything. She didn't run. She prepared, and someone, somewhere, made sure no one noticed she was gone, until now. Back in the present, Maya held the old report in her hands, photocopied and stained. She read it again and again, as if something would suddenly shift, as if the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. Sheriff Dane leaned back against the rusted hood of his cruiser, eyes scanning the horizon like the answers might rise with the dust. Maya watched him from a distance before walking over, the crunch of salt under her boots sharp in the stillness. "You didn't work the original case," she said, more statement than question. He nodded, not looking at her. "I was in high school when Lila disappeared." That caught her off guard. He didn't seem that young. Maybe it was the desert. It aged everyone different. "You read the old report?" she asked. "Every line," he said. "Twice." Maya studied him. Most people here seemed pretty happy to forget her. Dane finally looked at her. His gaze was steady, but there was something else in it, a bruise behind the eyes. Guilt? Regret? "My father was Grant," he said. The name landed like a dropped stone. "Deputy Grant?" He nodded once. "He worked the case, or didn't, depending on who you ask." Maya stiffened. "So, you're trying to fix his mistake?" "Trying to understand it," he said quietly. "I think about what he missed, what he refused to see, what it means when someone just vanishes and the world keeps turning." Maya let the silence sit. It wasn't comforting. "I was 13, Dane added. "But I remember Lila. I remember the way people talked about her, like she was trouble before she ever did a damn thing." "She was loud," Maya said. "She laughed in church. She wrote letters to herself. She kissed boys in daylight and didn't lie about it." "And this town hated that," Dane muttered. Maya turned to him, her voice tight. "Then don't pretend you're different." "I'm not," he said, "but I'm still here, and I'm listening now." The desert wind picked up. The tape marking the dig site flapped like broken wings. "I need to see the notebook," Maya said. Dane nodded slowly. "We tagged it yesterday. It's at the station. You can go through it. But be ready." "Ready for what?" "For the version of your sister she never let anyone see." The journal smelled like old smoke and desert rot. Half of it had been charred, edges curled like petals, the spine brittle from heat and salt. Sheriff Dane handed it to Maya in a Ziploc evidence pouch, the plastic slick with her trembling fingers. "Found in the glove box," he said. "We almost missed it, thought it was debris." Maya sat alone in the evidence room, the hum of overhead lights loud against the silence. She slipped on gloves, peeled the pouch open, and laid the notebook gently on the table. The front was scorched, but the words remained. Field notes, confessions, exit plan. Her heart tightened. The first pages were fragmented, dates out of order, some ink smeared beyond recognition. But others were horrifyingly clear. Saw the same truck again, parked near mile marker 179. Lights off, engine running. Watched me for 10 minutes. I didn't move. Neither did they. Maya swallowed hard. Voicemails are gone. Whole inbox wiped. I'm not imagining this. Someone's following me, not just watching, listening. Further down, Maya thinks I'm spiraling. Maybe I am, but something's wrong out here. I feel it in my spine, like the earth is holding its breath. The entries grew more erratic. Drawings, frantic loops, crossed out names. The salt is a trap. It preserves what it can't kill. She turned the page and stopped cold. If you find this, it means I'm gone. But I didn't run. I need you to believe that, Maya. I was getting close, too close. Maya's hand went to her mouth. It wasn't just a diary. It was a breadcrumb trail, a warning. Someone, something had been after Lila. And now it was Maya holding the evidence, too late to stop it, maybe just in time to step into its path. She flipped to the last legible page. A name was scrawled in thick ink, underlined twice. Jackson Ray. He knows. Her pulse spiked. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, dry and high and sharp, as if the desert was reading over her shoulder. That night, the desert came for her in her sleep. Maya jerked awake in the motel bed, drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum inside a locked trunk. The cheap air conditioner clicked off, and silence rushed in, thick and cloying. The dream clung to her skin like dust. She was back on the salt flats, alone. The white ground cracked beneath her feet, and the sky was an impossible shade of black, so dark it swallowed sound. Lila stood a few yards ahead, facing away, hair moving in a wind Maya couldn't feel. Maya called out, but no sound came. Lila turned. Her mouth was full of salt. When Maya woke, her own mouth was dry, choked with thirst, her tongue thick. She stumbled to the sink, flicked the tap, and drank in greedy gulps. She didn't look in the mirror. She couldn't bear to see her sister's eyes in her own reflection. The nightmares didn't stop with sleep. They followed her into daylight. At breakfast, she blinked and saw the floor ripple like liquid. In the parking lot, the heat shimmered into shapes, figures standing still at the edge of her vision, always gone when she turned. PTSD, she told herself. Or maybe guilt, maybe both. But something deeper gnawed at her, a feeling she hadn't known since childhood. That something was watching, not from the shadows, but from beneath her, as if the earth itself remembered her footsteps and resented them. Back in her motel room, she retrieved the notebook again, flipping back to a torn page with a hand-drawn map. Lila had circled a spot just beyond the salt flats. Labeled in shaky script, "He waits here." Underneath, a final phrase, "Don't trust what you hear after sundown." Maya looked out the window. The sun was already tilting westward. Her phone buzzed. Sheriff Dane, incoming call. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. Maya, his voice came through, tight. We need to talk. Someone broke into the evidence room last night. Her chest tightened. What did they take? There was a pause. Your sister's journal. It's gone. The ranger station was older than it looked, half buried in sand, its windows yellowed with age, the sign out front nearly erased by time and wind. Sheriff Dane led the way, boots crunching over dry brush as Maya followed, unease building with every step. Inside, the air was stale with sweat and dust. A wall fan groaned overhead, barely moving. Ranger Wallace, retired, leathery and silent as stone, nodded to them but said nothing. Instead, he pointed to the back room. Dane opened the door. Maya stepped inside and froze. The back wall was completely covered. Maps, thumbtacks, photos curling at the corners, names scrawled in red and black ink, dotted lines leading nowhere. Some of the faces were young, some not. All were women. She stepped closer, heart racing. This can't be real, she whispered. It's real, Dane said quietly behind her. Wallace started collecting the names after his niece disappeared in 2006. The department never took it seriously. Just another girl who left town. Maya's eyes scanned the tangle of notes. She spotted Lila's face, age 26, smiling through a cracked Polaroid. A red string connected her to two other women, Angela Frey, 2009, Maribel Santos, 2012, and beneath them, last seen near Dry Lake. There are over a dozen here, Maya said. 17, Dane confirmed. None officially linked, different counties, no physical evidence connecting them, but look at the geography. Maya did. Her stomach turned. All the disappearances formed a pattern, converging like cracks in glass, right at the edge of the salt flats, right where Lila's Jeep had been found. I don't understand, she said, voice shaking. Why didn't anyone talk about this? They did, Dane muttered. No one listened. Maya traced her fingers over the red lines, feeling them like scars. This wasn't just about Lila. It never had been. She wasn't the first. She hadn't been the last. Someone, or something, had been erasing women for years, and the salt had been keeping its secrets. Until now. Maya had forgotten the sound of her sister's voice, until it came screaming back through the static of memory. It had been a Tuesday. Rain in Seattle, the kind that never fully stopped. She was grading essays, sipping cold coffee, when the phone rang. Lila's name glowing on the screen like a ghost she hadn't spoken to in months. She'd hesitated before answering. Lila? The silence on the other end wasn't silent at all. It breathed, trembled. Then came a ragged whisper. Maya, I think I made a mistake. It was like Lila was underwater, words distorted, panicked. They know. I tried to go back, but it's different now. Something's wrong with the desert. Something's watching. Static cut in. Maya had pressed the phone tighter to her ear. Lila, slow down. You're not making sense. Are you drunk? A sob. Please. Just remember what I told you about the salt, about Jackson. He said they bury them, where no one looks. I shouldn't have come back here. The line went dead. Maya had stared at her screen, tried to call back, straight to voicemail. She told herself it was just another one of Lila's spirals. There had been so many, erratic moods, cryptic texts, chasing shadows. Maya had learned to detach, to protect herself. She couldn't keep syncing with her. So she'd turned the phone off and gone back to her papers. She never heard her sister's voice again. Now, sitting in her motel bed 10 years later, Maya played the voicemail from that night, still stored in her cloud archive. Just a fragment. If something happens to me, it's not an accident. Don't believe them. The guilt crawled up her throat, acidic and raw. She had hung up. Her sister had been crying for help, and Maya, exhausted, frustrated, had chosen silence, chosen distance. And now the only thing left was an echo wrapped in static and regret. She pressed the phone to her chest and closed her eyes. "I'm listening now, Lila," she whispered. "I swear to God, I'm listening." But outside the window, the wind just dragged its fingers across the salt. He called himself Travis, but no one in town used his name. Around here, he was just the Sultan Creep, the guy who talked to himself in parking lots and posted warnings on rusted stop signs. A fixture of the fringe, too broken to be taken seriously, too sharp to fully ignore. Sheriff Dane was reluctant to bring Maya to him, but the moment she mentioned Lila's name, Travis had called her, said he'd been waiting for her to ask. She found him on the edge of a dried canal outside Bombay Beach, in a junkyard that smelled of burned plastic and salt rot. He wore mirrored sunglasses and a hoodie, despite the blistering sun. Solar panels leaned against cinder blocks like abandoned wings. She was smart, he said, eyes flicking up to Maya as she approached. Your sister. Too smart to go quietly. Maya narrowed her eyes. Did you know her? I watched her, he said, grinning. The same way I watch the sky. The signs. The patterns. She came here for truth. But you know what truth gets you out here? He pointed to the desert. Buried. She wanted to leave, and yet, something in the way he said watched made her freeze. What do you know about the Jeep? She asked. He snorted. That it was planted, just like the others, just like every clue they want you to chase. They, Travis leaned in. There's a man. They call him the Cleaner. Doesn't live anywhere. Doesn't drive anything newer than 1989. Shows up when the story gets messy. When someone notices too much. When a girl doesn't know her place. Maya felt her blood go cold. You're saying someone made her disappear. He smiled again, teeth too white. I'm saying someone makes a lot of them disappear, and not just her. You're not the first sister to come looking, but you might be the last. He pulled something from his hoodie. A Polaroid, water-stained and curled. Maya took it. It was a blurry image of a man in a long coat walking into the flats. No face, no date, just a caption in ink. Dry Lake, 3 days before she vanished. Sheriff Dane stood knee-deep in the salt, his boots sinking into the brittle crust as he peeled back the earth one layer at a time. The air was motionless, thick with heat, and every movement kicked up a glint of something unnatural. It wasn't just salt down there. He crouched low, brushing carefully with gloved hands, revealing a fine powdery sheen that sparkled under the sun, metallic, almost luminous. He collected a sample and held it up. Tiny silver flakes, too uniform, too deliberate. Maya squinted at them, crouching beside him. That's not from the Jeep? Dane shook his head slowly. Number engine damage wouldn't create a dispersion like this. He looked around at the faint trail glimmering in the basin, leading away from the buried vehicle, was spread, intentionally. He stood, eyes following the glimmer like breadcrumbs. They lead east, he murmured, toward the old site. Maya blinked. What site? He didn't answer, just started walking. They crossed a quarter-mile of dead flats, the salt cracking beneath them, windless and silent, until rusted fencing appeared like bones sticking out of the ground. Beyond it, collapsed trailers, scorched concrete foundations, and a half-buried sign. U.S. Military, Test Range, No Trespassing. Dane exhaled slowly. This place was decommissioned in '93. Locals call it the dump yard. It's where they left things they didn't want found. Maya stared through the broken fence, heart beating faster. What kind of things? He didn't answer, Instead, he opened a canvas bag and pulled out a portable field spectrometer. He'd called in a favor. State level. The machine hummed and flickered as he scanned the silver dust on his gloves. The readout glowed red, high metal content, traces of mercury, aluminum, and lead. Industrial waste, military grade. Maya's skin went cold. This stuff, it's toxic, Dane muttered. And it's everywhere around the Jeep. It was dumped here, then moved. Someone knew exactly where to leave her. Why bury her there? Maya whispered. Why cover her in this? Dane looked back toward the Jeep. To make sure no one would ever dig her up. Maya didn't breathe as the sheriff handed her the envelope. The seal was already broken. Inside, a single page, light as air and heavier than grief. She read it once, then again. The words wouldn't change. Mitochondrial DNA does not match known family sample. Remains inconclusive for subject, Lila Morgan. She looked up slowly, her voice cracking open. It's not her? Dane shook his head. Number the skeleton they pulled from under the Jeep. Isn't Lila. Maya's legs buckled into the nearest chair. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Everything inside her, the grief, the guilt, the long petrified acceptance, cracked like glass. It wasn't her. It wasn't her. But then, where the hell was her sister? I don't understand, she whispered. We found her Jeep, her notebook, her blood on the seat. She was there, Dane said quietly. That part's real, but someone went to a lot of trouble to make us think she never left. Maya swallowed. Then who is this? Who's buried in her place? The sheriff sat across from her, rubbing his jaw. Woman. Early 30s. No known dental record hits yet. Likely been there at least 8 years. Too degraded for facial reconstruction. Maya stared at the printout, numb. She had mourned a stranger. I don't know what to feel, she whispered. Relieved, Dane said. Hopeful. Maya looked at him, jaw tight, number furious. She stood abruptly, pacing. Who does this? Who kills one woman to cover up the disappearance of another? Silence. Then Dane exhaled, steady but grim. Someone who knew we'd be looking. Someone who wanted us to find something. Someone who needed a body to close the case. Maya turned to him, her voice sharp. Then we start over. We go back to every name on that wall, every missing girl in that God-forsaken desert. Dane held up a hand. We're not alone in this anymore. When that DNA report hit the state lab, it flagged a pattern match, a red file, special access only. What kind of file? He looked her dead in the eyes. One they don't want reopened. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Her sister was out there, alive or dead. Someone had moved the truth, and now she was coming for it. The photograph had been tucked inside the back of Lila's burned journal, behind a folded map and a single pressed flower, desiccated now, petals gray and crumbling like ash. Maya hadn't noticed it at first, but now it sat on her motel bedspread, catching light from the afternoon sun, the edges warped by heat, the image hazy but intact. Lila, smiling. Her arm wrapped around a man Maya didn't recognize. The photo was taken somewhere outdoors, scrub brush behind them, a sagging trailer in the distance. The man wore aviators, his smile wide, almost performative. His arm around Lila was too tight, too familiar. Something about the angle made Maya uneasy. He was older, maybe 10, 15 years, desert-worn. There was something off about him, something buried in the posture, the grin that didn't quite reach the eyes. On the back, scribbled in Lila's handwriting, Dry Lake, July. He says there's something under the sand. Maya stared at the note for a long time. Then she took the photo downtown. The local diner was half empty. Dust hung in the air like smoke. She asked around, waitresses, old men in trucker hats, even the cashier behind the gas station window. Everyone looked at the photo. Everyone looked away. One man, a mechanic with nicotine-stained fingers, glanced at it and froze. "You recognize him, don't you?" Maya asked. His eyes shifted toward the door. He wiped his hands on a rag that already looked like blood. "I'd forget you ever saw that face," he muttered. "He don't exist anymore." Maya stepped closer, lowering her voice. "He was with my sister, the week she vanished." The man's jaw tensed. Then he leaned in, whispered like someone might be listening through the drywall. "Name's Ray Jackson. Used to be sheriff's deputy. Quit after a girl went missing. Real quiet like. Lives past the old refinery now. Don't go knocking at night." Maya's heart thudded in her chest. Ray Jackson. The name from the journal. The man who knows. She looked down at Lila's smile, frozen in time, wrapped in the arm of a man who had vanished from public life. And then she stood and walked toward the desert. 10 years ago, the sun was setting like a bruise over the Mojave, and Lila Morgan was a woman already halfway gone. She checked into the Desert Willow Motel under the name Sarah Elms, her handwriting shaky, her smile forced. The clerk didn't ask for ID. No one ever did here. Room 6, cheap lock, peeling wallpaper. The kind of place people used when they didn't want to be remembered. Inside, she paced. The air was stifling, dry with the scent of mildew and old cigarettes. Her backpack hit the floor with a thud, full of maps, pages ripped from old geology books, a small black recorder, and a worn Polaroid. The man in the photo. Jackson Ray. She hesitated before pulling out the leather-bound notebook. The same one Maya would find 10 years later, warped by heat and water, half of it burned. She opened it to a blank page, then pressed the pen hard, as if trying to bleed something onto the paper. He took me to the place. The old range. There are rooms under the salt, doors with no handles. No one's supposed to find them. She stopped writing, rubbed at her temple, then recorded a voice memo. "If something happens to me, tell Maya. Look under the floor, where the salt hums. He told me things he shouldn't have. He's scared now. I think they're watching him too." Her voice trembled. She clicked the recorder off. A knock on the door made her freeze. She didn't answer, just moved slowly to the window, peeled the curtain back. A dark shape stood by the road, tall, motionless, no car, no flashlight, just watching. Lila stepped back, hands shaking, locked the door, then, in a desperate scribble, wrote what would become the final note in the journal. "If I go missing, it's because I found something I wasn't supposed to. Don't let them close this. Don't let them bury me." She stared at the words for a moment, then tore the page out, folded it twice, and tucked it into the vent under the sink. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying salt and something colder. The woman's house looked like it had been swallowed and spat out by the desert. Corrugated siding, chipped paint, the roof sloping like a shrug. Wind chimes made from forked tines and broken mirror shards sang softly in the breeze. And inside, birds, cages, dozens of them, stacked along the walls, hanging from the ceiling, crowding every available surface, parakeets, doves, even a crow glaring at Maya with one eye, black as oil. "Careful where you step," came a voice from the back room. "Some of them aren't in cages." Maya hesitated at the threshold, then she stepped inside. The woman emerged slowly, barefoot, long gray braid over one shoulder, skin leathery and sun-worn. She wore a stained smock and a strange necklace made of tiny bones. "You're Maya," she said. Not a question. Maya froze. "How do you look like your sister, but not in the eyes." The woman moved closer, her gaze sharp. "Your sister's eyes had already seen what yours haven't." "What does that mean?" The woman only smiled. Then she turned and began ladling water into a dish for the birds. She came here once, before the last time, told me she was chasing ghosts under the salt. Maya stepped further in, her throat tight. Did she tell you about a man named Jackson Ray? The woman paused, her knuckles whitened. She said he showed her something. Her voice dropped lower. Said he took her where the birds won't fly. Maya's breath caught. What did she find? The woman turned to her, eyes fierce. Not what, who. There's something out there that doesn't rot, doesn't sleep. Something sealed in the old ground from when men were testing bombs and burying sins. And your sister dug too close. The birds erupted suddenly, wings flapping inside the cages. The crow shrieked. The woman didn't flinch. She's still there, you know, she whispered. Some part of her, in the salt. It keeps things. Maya swallowed, her voice barely audible. Why didn't you tell someone? The woman smiled sadly, brushing a feather from her shoulder. No one listens to women with birds. The dream came like rot through the seams of her sleep. Maya stood in the salt, barefoot, moonlight brushing her face. A soft wind whispered her name. Below her feet, the crust cracked. Something shifted. A hand broke the surface. Fingers, bloodless, reaching, scratching. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. The salt pulled at her legs, tugging her downward. And then, Lila's voice. I was awake when they buried me. Maya jolted upright, breath catching in her throat. Sweat soaked the sheets. Her heart pounded like it was trying to climb out of her chest. She didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Sheriff Dane waited outside the motel with a manila folder and a look that had forgotten how to be casual. We got the second scan, he said quietly. The remains under the Jeep. Something's off. Maya followed him into the station. The walls hummed with silence. Whoever that woman was, he said, flipping through forensic photos. She didn't die before she was buried. There's bruising, pressure on the wrists, the sternum, sand in her lungs. Maya stared at the photo. A rib cage compressed inward, microscopic particles fused in her airway. Are you saying, she whispered. She was alive when she went under, Dane said. At least for a few minutes. Maya turned away, bile rising. She gripped the edge of the desk until her knuckles ached. Jesus Christ! It wasn't an accident. This was staged. Someone buried her. To replace your sister. Maya pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Lila's voice echoed again. It's not an accident. Don't believe them. Dane lowered his voice. There's more. We ran trace on a tool mark found on the Jeep's rear quarter panel. Unique pattern, cold-forged steel, military-grade entrenching equipment. Maya's eyes snapped to his. Military? He nodded slowly. Desert operations, used for fast burial, quick cover. Someone wanted her gone fast and knew exactly how to do it. Maya's vision swam. The salt, the dream, the evidence. She wasn't chasing a cold case anymore. She was stepping into something still warm, still breathing, and maybe still watching. Maya found it tucked behind the motel dresser, long after she should have been asleep. The spiral notebook was smaller than Lila's usual journals, faded green, its metal coil rusted and bent at the corners. It had slipped through time, dust, and possibly intention, as if it hadn't wanted to be found until now. She sat cross-legged on the motel bed, the wind outside whispering through a cracked window pane. Inside the notebook, tight, frantic handwriting, pages crowded with symbols, names, times, doodles of jagged spirals and circles with eyes in the center. Some pages were torn, others half erased, but the fear was still inked into the paper. There are people out here. I saw them. Not camping, not lost. They move in silence, always at dusk. Hoods, masks. Sometimes they hum. There's a pattern to where they go. Coordinates in the sand. They're performing something. Old. Something they believe in. Something they protect. I saw one of them near the old military range. He stared at me like he knew me. Like he already knew how I'd end. Maya's chest tightened as she flipped to the next page. In the center, one word underlined 3 times. Pregnant. She blinked, reread it. The word didn't change. Her throat dried. The next page was shakier, scribbled almost violently. I haven't told him yet. I don't even know what it means, what this will become. I don't want to run, but if I stay, they'll know. They'll want it. Maybe they already do. Maya touched the page like it might still be warm. A child? Her sister had been pregnant? The implications sank in like a blade. The replacement body. The deliberate burial. The silence that followed. Maybe it hadn't just been Lila they were trying to erase. Maybe it was what she was carrying. Outside, the wind shifted. Somewhere far off, a single coyote howled. And suddenly, Maya felt like she wasn't alone in the room, like someone was standing just beyond the door, waiting for her to know what Lila had known. And now that she did, they might be coming for her too. The sheriff's office was quiet, lit only by a single desk lamp. Outside, the sky had turned a bruise-colored gray. Wind whispered against the windows, the kind that carried dust and secrets. Maya sat at the edge of the worn leather couch, elbows on her knees, palms pressed to her face like she could hold the pressure of everything in. Sheriff Dane didn't push her. He waited, still, like someone who'd buried his own ghosts. Finally, Maya spoke, softly, her voice dry. I used to wish she would disappear. Dane's head lifted, slow and deliberate. Lila? She nodded, not looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the floor as if memory had pooled there. When we were teenagers, she'd run away all the time, always came back like nothing happened, but it messed with everything. My mom, my grades, my life. She was so much, too much, bright and burning. People always loved her for it. I hated her for it. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, trembling. One night, when I was 17, she didn't come home for 2 days. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking, God, what if she just never came back? Silence. And when she finally did, it was like nothing had happened. She climbed through the window, smiled, asked if I wanted to watch old movies. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I just watched Casablanca and pretended I hadn't wished her gone. Dane watched her carefully, not judging, just listening. Guilt isn't the same as blame, he said quietly. Maya shook her head. It feels the same. She looked up at him now, eyes red. So when she disappeared for real, I didn't go looking right away. I told myself she'd come back like always. I waited too long. I wanted the silence. Her voice broke, soft as a whisper. And now I'd give anything to hear her ruin everything again. The room went still. And that, more than any evidence or clue, told Dane what kind of storm this woman was willing to walk into. Because love, when it's laced with regret, is the kind that doesn't stop digging. The lake bed cracked beneath their boots, dry, pale, spider-webbed with time. Sheriff Dane led the way, his eyes scanning the ground like it might speak, if only he stared hard enough. Maya walked just behind, the wind tugging her hair across her face, the sun high but cold. It was hard to imagine water ever lived here. Now, the ground held only ghosts. Third time we've circled this grid, Dane muttered, but it wasn't frustration in his voice. It was dread. If that dog's right... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The cadaver dog, a sleek, anxious shepherd, barked once, then began pawing furiously at a patch of pale earth near a brittle mesquite tree. Dane dropped to his knees. Gloved hands moved the soil gently at first, then faster. Maya crouched beside him, and then fabric. Faded, sun-bleached. A strip of something floral, not buried deep. Just enough to forget. Dane stopped, sat back on his heels. "That's not erosion," Maya whispered. "Someone put it there. Someone knew the ground would hold." The coroner's team arrived within the hour. By dusk, they'd flagged 4 more sites, shallow depressions. Too symmetrical to be natural, too many to be coincidence. A pattern was forming, one Maya hadn't been ready for. "Jesus," Dane muttered. "This isn't about Lila anymore." But Maya shook her head. "It's always been about Lila. She found this. She knew." She pointed to the site the dog had marked first. She marked that place in her notebook, that exact spot. "Look." She pulled the green spiral from her backpack, flipped to the page with the strange symbols and GPS coordinates. She was tracking them, following whatever this is. Dane's brow furrowed. "If these are connected," he said slowly, "then we've got more than a missing woman. We've got a burial site. Ritualistic. Methodical." Maya stood silently, the salt wind biting her skin. She wasn't looking at the flagged graves. She was staring out toward the horizon, where the ground shimmered and warped in the heat. "It's not just a killer," she said, voice hollow. "It's a system, a place that feeds on women and leaves them to vanish." And now, it had been fed too well. The file room in the back of the Mojave County Sheriff's Department wasn't digitized. That was part of the problem. Metal shelves bowed under the weight of old boxes, the air dry and stale with the scent of aging paper and dust that hadn't been disturbed in years. Maya stood between rows, holding the cold flashlight steady while Sheriff Dane slid a dented gray box onto a table. "Lila's file," he said. "At least what's left of it." The manila folder inside was thinner than it should have been. She could tell that just from the weight in her hand. When she opened it, her stomach dropped. Pages were missing. Whole sections gone. Cut, not torn. Photocopies of her last known activity. A blurry DMV photo. A traffic citation from 6 months before she vanished. But no witness interviews. No phone records. No location reports. Nothing that showed anyone had actually looked for her. "What the hell is this?" Maya whispered, her voice cracking. Dane looked grim. Someone scrubbed it. He pulled another folder from deeper in the box, labeled Missing Female, 1992, Kristen Vallon. Same problem. Half the pages sliced clean. No evidence trail. Another folder. Another woman. Another blank space. Maya's pulse picked up. How many files are like this? Dane was quiet. Then, 14. All women. All within a 100-mile radius. All gone without a trace. All their files wiped. Maya stepped back, breath catching in her throat. Who could even do that? Someone with access. Someone who knew exactly what to erase. He looked at her then, face hardening. There's only one person who was on every one of these cases. One name buried in every original dispatch log. He handed her a worn sticky note. The ink had faded, but the name was still legible. Deputy Jackson Ray. Maya stared at it, blood pounding in her ears. Her sister had gone to him for answers. But maybe he'd already buried them. And now, she was the only one left willing to dig them up. The answering machine was a relic. Yellowed plastic with cracked buttons and a broken rewind function. Sheriff Dane found it in the evidence locker, misfiled under a burglary case from 2015. But the tape inside, it wasn't burglary, it was Lila. Maya sat at the desk in the sheriff's office, fingers trembling as Dane slid the cassette into an old handheld player. The room was dim, lit only by a desk lamp and the blinking red light on the machine, still blinking after all these years like it was waiting. He pressed play. Beep. "Hey, it's me. I didn't know who else to call. Maya leaned forward, heart in her throat. I'm out near the salt flats, near where we used to go camping as kids. You remember that spot with the old mine shaft? A pause, breathing, wind in the background. Then, something's wrong, Maya. I found something. Someone. He's not supposed to be alive. Maya's eyes widened. That wasn't the voicemail she remembered. That wasn't what had been left on her phone. The official version had been different, shorter, just a goodbye. This was something else. I think they're watching me. I keep seeing headlights at night. And the sand, Maya, it hums. It hums. The voice cracked. The wind grew louder. There was a sound like metal, something being dragged. If I don't make it back, don't let them say I ran. You know me. I wouldn't leave you. Not like that. Then softer, tell Mom, I'm sorry for being the storm. Click. End of tape. Silence pulsed in the room like a heartbeat. Maya sat still, staring at the player like it might spit out more. That wasn't the message on my phone, she whispered. Dane nodded, grim. Because someone replaced it. This version never entered into evidence. It was buried in the wrong file, on purpose. Maya looked at him, the storm rising in her chest. They didn't just bury her in the desert, they buried her story. And now, after all this time, it was clawing its way back to the surface. The coroner's truck idled in the back lot as dawn broke over the salt flats, its engine sputtering like a wounded animal. Maya and Sheriff Dane stood side by side, the morning chill creeping through their clothes despite the sun's timid rise. The marked site lay before them, silent and waiting. Are you sure about this? Dane asked, voice low. We're disturbing remains that have been here almost a decade. Maya swallowed. She'd felt the weight of that skull in her mind all night. The remains might not be Lila's, but they were someone's. And someone had gone to great effort to frame the disappearance. They deserve their name back, she said, her tone steady. Dane nodded and waved to the coroner. The team descended, trowels, brushes, cameras in hand, all meticulous and solemn. Maya watched the first rake scrape across the crusted salt. Bits of cloth emerged, a patterned blouse, threadbare and pale. She recognized the same floral material she'd seen at the other graves. She swallowed hard. Then, the skull appeared, ivory in the salt, sunken eye sockets staring at the sky. As the coroner cleaned the area, revealing a jawbone, bits of vertebrae, a calm descended, death laid bare, truth emerging. Dane handed Maya a folded sheet of paper, the exhumation order, signed by the county prosecutor that morning. You did this, he said softly. It's on you now. She nodded once. They deserve justice, even in death. And maybe bringing this up will force someone to talk. As the team packed up, Dane handed her a sealed envelope. From the lab, they did a mitochondrial match on the remains we pulled just now. Maya's pulse thundered. She tore it open. It's a match, she whispered. Match to Angela Frey, gone since 2009. Her chest tightened. Another victim. Another erased truth. The desert sun climbed higher, burning bright and brutal. Yet the salt had given them something back. A name. A story. Now, if they could survive long enough to tell it. The sun didn't rise that day. It ignited. By noon, the salt flats shimmered like a false ocean. Every step Maya took kicked up heat waves that bent the horizon. She'd wandered too far from the coroner's site, from Sheriff Dane's warnings. But something out there had pulled her. An intuition, maybe? Or madness. Her breath came in short, rasping bursts. Sweat stung her eyes. Her boots sank deeper into the white crust with each step. Then the ground tilted. Maya blinked, staggered. The world didn't tilt. It rippled. The edges of her vision curled inward, tunneling into white and gold. A low hum buzzed beneath her feet. The salt was vibrating. She dropped to her knees, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gripping the notebook. Lila's notebook. Her skin burned through her clothes. Her heart skipped once, then again. Darkness swept in. She stood barefoot in the salt, cool, still. The wind didn't bite anymore. It whispered. And across the flats, walking toward her in the distance, was Lila, smiling. Not broken, not afraid, smiling. Her dark hair floated around her shoulders like she was underwater. Her white dress billowed, untouched by wind. Her eyes glowed with something Maya hadn't seen in them for years. Peace. You found her, Lila said softly, voice ringing like a bell. Maya couldn't speak. Her lips parted, but no sound came. They tried to make me vanish, but you kept looking. She reached out, fingertips brushing Maya's cheek. You were always the storm, too. You just didn't know it. Maya finally found her voice, a hoarse whisper. Are you dead? Lila didn't answer. She just turned, looked out across the flats, where a line of women stood in the distance. Dozens of them, silent, watching, waiting. Maya stepped forward, but the world cracked. A sound like glass shattering filled her ears. The salt dissolved beneath her feet. And then she woke up choking on dust, a paramedic's flashlight in her face. Sheriff Dane crouched beside her, gripping her wrist for a pulse. You collapsed, he said. Jesus, Maya. You've been out for almost an hour. She sat up slowly, vision swimming. But all she could think about was Lila's voice. You were always the storm. And now the storm was awake. The machine beeped in sharp, mechanical rhythm, its wheels grinding over the crusted salt. Ground-penetrating radar wasn't built for poetry. It didn't care about ghosts or secrets. But it spoke plainly in digital echoes. Maya stood beside the technician, watching the monitor with a knot tightening in her stomach. Sheriff Dane leaned in, squinting at the grainy waveform. That's the Jeep, he muttered, pointing at the rectangular void. We know that, Maya replied, her voice thin. Keep going. The radar rolled forward another 10 feet. The technician slowed it, tapping the screen. A second void began to take shape, longer, rougher around the edges, not as clean. And then came the words that stopped the air. There's something else buried down there. Another vehicle? Dane asked, brow furrowed. The tech nodded slowly. Older. No chassis number popping up, but it's burned out. Metal fragmentation's dense. Definitely fire damage. Maya stepped back, heart hammering. The Jeep wasn't buried alone. She stared at the screen like it was a confession. 2 vehicles. One pristine, almost lovingly placed. The other, charred, destroyed, buried deeper. Why would they burn one and not the other? She asked out loud. Dane exhaled. Cover up, misdirection. One's the body, the other's the crime. The tech looked uneasy. We'll need a team to excavate. That thing's at least 6 feet down, and it's twisted bad, like it was compacted. Maya's pulse raced. This wasn't just about Lila anymore. The salt had layers. Whoever buried her Jeep wanted it to be found, eventually. But the truck? Someone wanted that to stay hidden forever. As the wind picked up, Maya closed her eyes and listened to the rising hum. This place didn't just take people, it held them, preserved them in silence, in salt. And now, the desert was finally cracking open. Whatever was buried in that truck. It was the reason her sister died. The opening was barely visible, hidden behind a ridge of white rock and wind-blown brush, a jagged split in the salt crust like a wound the desert had tried to heal over. Sheriff Dane spotted it first. That's no erosion, he muttered, stepping carefully, gun drawn. Maya followed close behind, flashlight gripped tight, her pulse drumming against her ribs. The air shifted as they neared the crevice, cooler, damper, and tinged with something coppery, old blood, old earth. The entrance descended at a slant, reinforced with rusted beams. Someone had tried to conceal it. Tarp fragments, collapsed boards, salt packed against the outer wall, but time had betrayed them. Dane crouched at the mouth. Used to be a salt mine back in the 60s. Most were sealed, too unstable. But this one wasn't, Maya finished, stepping into the dark. Their flashlights cut narrow beams through the tunnel. The walls shimmered with crystallized salt, but deeper in, the sparkle gave way to shadows. Carvings scratched the walls, symbols, initials, tally marks. People were down here, she whispered. Farther in, the ground changed. Disturbed earth, collapsed crates, a child's shoe, half buried in the dirt. Maya knelt, brushing it off. Size 6. Worn, not Lila's. Dane found the first piece of cloth wedged between the wall and a support beam. Lace, aged and brittle. Then another, and another. All different. Dresses, shawls, remnants of women. This was a dump site, Dane said grimly. No, it was a holding site. You think it was trafficking? Maya asked, her voice trembling. Dane didn't answer at first. Then, with a look that said everything he'd seen was catching up to him. Or worse. The air turned thicker. Maya's light passed over a stack of rotted crates. On the side, barely visible beneath the grime, a government stamp. U.S. Department of Interior. She froze. Why would the government be shipping crates to an abandoned mine? Dane looked down the tunnel. It stretched beyond their lights. Because this isn't just about Lila anymore, he said. This tunnel's been used for years. They stood there in the dark, listening. The mine wasn't empty. It was waiting. The old CRT monitor flickered to life, casting a cold bluish hue across the darkened evidence room. The VHS had no label. Just black tape, brittle at the edges, dust-coated. Sheriff Dane slid it in without a word. Maya stood frozen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The silence felt thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. The screen buzzed. Then, static. A timestamp blinked. June 2nd, 1998. The image cleared. A small room. Cement walls. One table. One chair. A young woman, early 20s, sat under a dangling bulb, blinking against the glare. Her hair was matted, one eye swollen. The camera zoomed in, but she didn't flinch. "State your name," came a voice from behind the lens. Deep, measured, detached. The woman hesitated, then whispered, "Rebecca Lorne." Maya's heart skipped. That name was in Lila's notebook, one of the circled missing women. "You volunteered for the program," the voice said. "Correct?" Rebecca didn't answer. Her jaw trembled. "We can help you if you cooperate." Then a figure stepped into frame. Tall, balding, glasses. His face caught the edge of the light, and Maya's knees nearly buckled. Him. The man from Lila's photo. The blurry figure over her shoulder in the Polaroid. The one they could never identify. Dane froze the frame. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "That's him. That's the man." They ran the tape's audio through forensic software. Hours later, the match came back. David Kellerman, former mine security, discharged quietly in 2001 after a misconduct report. No criminal charges, no follow-up, erased. But now, his voice was on record. And he wasn't just in Lila's life. He'd been haunting women in the Mojave for decades. Cold cases in 98, 2003, and 2009, Dane said, flipping through files. They all had a witness description that could match Kellerman. Maya stared at the frozen frame on the screen. The way his eyes never looked at Rebecca, only through her. She wasn't the first, Lila wasn't the last, but now we have a face. And finally, the desert had a name to give to its silence. The light on Maya's helmet flickered once, then steadied. The shaft swallowed her whole. She descended into the mine alone. Dane had argued the backup team was an hour out. But something had shifted in Maya, a stillness, a knowing. She needed to go first. The salt-coated tunnel narrowed as she moved deeper, each step echoing off the carved walls. Her breath came in short bursts, steam rising in front of her face despite the oppressive heat that radiated from the earth itself. The smell grew stronger, sweet rot, metallic decay, and lye. The deeper she went, the more time peeled away. This place didn't obey clocks. The walls wept. Crystals shimmered on rusted beams like frost over old wounds. Her boot struck something solid. She froze, shined the light down. A jawbone. Human. Nearby, a rusted chain. A torn scrap of flannel. A child's bracelet. Pink, with tiny stars. She dropped to her knees. There wasn't one skeleton. There were many. Layers of them. Bones jumbled in with others, some wrapped in decayed canvas sacks. A crude system of shallow pits lined the cavern. Fire-blackened corners where accelerants had been poured and burned. Not graves, disposal. She turned slowly, and then saw it. A makeshift altar, built of stones and old metal, tucked into a crevice at the far end of the tunnel. Upon it, a lock of dark hair, woven into a spiral and pinned beneath a rusted nameplate. Lila's name, burned into the metal, branded. Maya's knees gave out. She clutched the edge of the altar, gasping, trembling. Her sister hadn't just died down here. She'd been claimed. Her death was part of something older, a pattern, a ritual, a message. She stood, breath ragged, shined her light upward, and caught sight of a camera mounted in the corner, half covered in salt and dust. They filmed it. She staggered back toward the tunnel's mouth, voice cracking over the radio. "Dane, it's not just a mine. It's a goddamn archive." Silence. Then his voice. "We've got a problem. Kellerman just walked into the station." Maya's light blinked, and the mine went dark. The mine didn't collapse so much as exhale. A groaning moan echoed through the shaft as Maya crawled toward the dim outline of daylight. Thin, fractured, shifting. Dust rained from the ceiling. The tunnel walls contracted, a living thing choking on its own rot. Her fingers scraped the floor, nails splitting against crystallized salt. She coughed violently, tasting blood and dust, the flashlight now useless, dead in her grip. Then, a voice, distant, distorted. "Maya, you've got to move. The tunnel's going." Dane. The rumble behind her surged. Wood splintered. Rocks cracked. Something massive caved behind her. Then arms grabbed her, Dane's arms, and pulled hard. The two of them collapsed just outside the mine's mouth as it buckled and sealed behind them with a heavy, final groan. A white cloud burst into the sky like smoke from a funeral pyre. Maya coughed on her side, struggling for breath, her face streaked with salt and ash. Dane crouched beside her, shouting for medics. "You weren't supposed to go alone," he snapped. She turned to him, eyes bloodshot but burning. "I found them," she whispered. "They were writing." He froze. 10 minutes later, after the dust settled and backup arrived, they used an adjacent shaft to bypass the collapse. Deeper within the mine, buried behind what looked like a false wall, they discovered a bunker, not industrial, personal. A small room carved out of the salt, lined wall to wall with journals, hundreds of them, some leather-bound, some water-damaged, all handwritten. The names inside matched case files. Lila's was near the top. "If someone finds this, I need you to know I didn't stop screaming. They just stopped listening." Some entries were confessions, others prayers. One was written entirely in blood. Maya wept quietly as she turned the pages. The ink faded in some. Salt had eaten through others. but the words remained. Because the salt doesn't forget. Sheriff Dane rested a hand on her shoulder. "We can bring them home now," she nodded. "They already are." The desert was quiet again. Not the silence of ignorance, but the hush that follows a reckoning. Maya stood alone beneath a bruised sky, where dawn rose slow and reluctant over the salt flats. A new cross had been planted at the edge of the mine. Simple, unmarked wood. Dozens more would follow. But this one was hers, and Lila's. She knelt beside the stone beneath the cross and gently set down the journal. The pages fluttered in the breeze like nervous fingers. "I brought you home," Maya whispered. A long breath passed through the valley. Wind swept across the cracked salt, whistling through the broken mouth of the sealed mine. It wasn't just wind, though. Not to Maya. She heard her. "Lila. You always did like to finish the story." The voice was soft, like breath against her ear, warm, knowing, gone in a blink. Maya didn't move. Tears welled but didn't fall. She'd cried all she could. What remained was something deeper. A quiet defiance. A promise to every woman whose name had been buried beneath that cursed crust. She rose. The officials had arrived hours ago. The press, too. Dane was already giving his third interview, calm and firm as ever. But Maya stayed back. This moment wasn't for them. She looked out over the flats, the heat still rising in soft mirages. Somewhere beneath her feet lay the bones of truth, memory, and horror. But above it all, was the sky. And Lila was in that too. "I remember your laugh. I remember your stubborn heart. I remember the day you stopped being afraid and started being fire." She touched the journal one last time, then stepped back. The camera crews weren't there for her. The archive would speak for itself now. The survivors' voices would rise. The system had buried them, but salt keeps everything. And the desert, once a place of vanishing, had become a place of remembrance. Maya turned her back to the mine and walked toward the sun. Maya didn't return to her apartment right away. The desert clung to her, on her skin, under her nails, deep in her lungs. It wasn't something you washed off. It was something that changed the shape of you. Quietly, permanently. She spent 2 days in a motel outside Barstow. The walls were thin, the air conditioner wheezed like a dying animal, and the water ran rust-stained. But it was real, tangible, and that mattered more than comfort. She didn't sleep much. Instead, she wrote. Not for work, not for the paper, for Lila. A letter she would never send. "I didn't save you. I know that now. But I found you. And that has to mean something." Her hand trembled as she folded the page. She slid it into the last journal, Lila's, and sealed it shut. Not with tape. With her own blood from a cut on her palm. A signature of sorts. She would give the journals to the families, as promised. The archive would go public, redacted, sure, but undeniable. The truth had weight now, and the dead had names again. The day she left the desert, the wind was sharp. It howled across the flats, curling around her like a question she could almost understand. She paused at the edge of the salt basin, squinting into the glare. And for a moment, just a flicker, she thought she saw Lila, standing near the horizon, wind in her hair, eyes closed, free. But when Maya blinked, the figure was gone. Just heat shimmer, dust, memory. Maybe that was all ghosts really were. She climbed into her car, took one last breath of dry, crackling air, then drove away, slowly, steadily, leaving the salt behind her, but not the truth, never the truth. Because she had learned something in the dark. Some deserts don't take life, they protect it, until someone is brave enough to listen. And Maya? She'd never stop listening. Not again.